Good morning. Hello and welcome to Neighborhood Unitarian Universalist Church in Pasadena. Welcome to all members, friends, and guests, here in person and virtually. Neighborhood Church creates and grows an inclusive community of faith connected by love, spirit, and service. My name is Andy Eaton, and I'm honored to serve as a member of your Board of Trustees. Reverend Teresa is on her last week of study leave and vacation. She'll be back next Sunday. Today's service is co-led by Angeline Jackson and Nicholas D'Agusto, with music by Adrian Benuelos and Wells Lang. Please take a moment to silence your devices as we begin our service. Thank you for joining us today as we continue to prioritize connection over perfection in this hybrid service, which is streamed on YouTube and which we are recording for future viewing. Seating is available in the back for those who don't want to appear in the recording. Based on guidance from our COVID Safety Committee, masks are still required for congregants inside and optional outside. You'll find information on our website about the many ways to connect with our church community throughout the week, both in person and virtually. We have a few announcements this morning. There are singers needed for Music Sunday on August 14th, and rehearsals start in less than 2 weeks, which is good because the 14th is 2 weeks. Secondly, our last loop, Living Our UU Principles focus groups will take place on Tuesday, August 2nd via Zoom and next Sunday after the service. Additionally, I want to send our condolences to James Coombs, whose mother-in-law died yesterday after a long illness. Again, welcome to Neighborhood Church, and whoever you are and wherever you are in your spiritual journey. Welcome to this inclusive faith community connected by love, spirit, and service. Our chalice lighting words this morning come from the Tao. Tao is beyond words and beyond understanding. Words may be used to speak of it, but they cannot contain it. Tao existed before words and names, before heaven and earth, before the 10,000 things. It is the unlimited father and mother of all limited things. Therefore, to see beyond boundaries, to the subtle heart of things, dispense with names, with concepts, with expectations and ambitions and differences. Tao and its many manifestations arise from the same source, subtle wonder within mysterious darkness. This is the beginning of an understanding.
Please rise in body or in spirit and join me in singing our opening hymn. It is the first hymn, number 1000 on our Trio hymnal, Morning Has Come.
Giving is a spiritual practice through which we put our values into action. Each Sunday, our congregation dedicates 100% of contributions to a local social justice organization. This week, our gifts go to Essentia. Please give generously through our website, text to give, or the QR code or box available at the exit. If you wish to make a payment towards your pledge, make a note in the subject line or use an envelope available at the box outside. Here to tell us about Essentia is Camille Guerrero, the Director of Development for Essentia. Camille.
Good morning, everyone. As Andy shared, I am the Director of Development with Essentia, and I started working with Essentia last August as the Interim Director of Development, and recently, well, last year, late fall, I accepted the position. And when I started out with Essentia, I literally was a volunteer. I was on a sabbatical at the time, and I decided I just want to go back to school, I want to get back to volunteering, et cetera, et cetera. And I just believe that, things don't happen by happenstance. As I was sitting there in the office just doing data entry, I looked up and I heard Camille, and I turned around and saw Laura Duncan, Dr. Laura Duncan, and she said, "What are you doing here?" well, I'm volunteering. What are you doing here? She says, I run Essentia. So as fate would have it, I ended up being asked to step in when the director of development gave her notice, and I was in an interim, it was an interim basis, and I literally fell in love with Essentia. It is one of the most amazing nonprofits I've ever had the privilege of working for, and I've been in the nonprofit arena for over 30 years. I've worked for agencies like the Salvation Army Southern California Division. I've worked for Goodwill Southern California. I've been in the social services arena for over 30 years, and I can tell you firsthand that Essentia does miracles every day with very little. The Salvation Army has millions of dollars. Goodwill Southern California brings in $230 million annually. Essentia runs their programs on $5.1 million annually with a staff of 51. So we do it lean, and we do it right, and we do it with the best of intentions to save lives every single day. So let me share a little bit about what Essentia is. Essentia is a nonprofit, comprehensive homeless services agency and emergency shelter dedicated to lifting people out of homelessness, one person, one family at a time. With our headquarters in Glendale, Essentia serves roughly 1,200 adults and children in need every year throughout Los Angeles. In 2006, Project Achieve became Path Achieve Glendale when people assisting the homeless took over the management of the multi-service center, shelter and transitional permanent supportive housing. Essentia became an independent organization when it separated from PATH in 2011. Essentia provides a range of services and housing to move homeless families and individuals in Burbank, Glendale, West Hollywood, East Hollywood, and the adjacent areas of Los Feliz, Koreatown, Midtown, and the surrounding communities of Northeast Los Angeles, off the streets and into their own home. These programs include outreach, street outreach, a 45-bed interim shelter that serves 180 per year that consists of families and single adults. From the time a client enters our access center, we provide comprehensive case management, on-site mental health care, including trauma therapy and therapy for children, specifically art therapy. We provide telepsychiatry, occupational therapy, financial literacy programs. This year, with the additional funding provided by the City of Los Angeles and Providence Help, we have added 10 new staff positions to expand our services to East Hollywood. Our homeless patients are high utilizers of hospital emergency departments and admissions directly to Essentia for housing services and connections to a medical home or primary and preventive care to end the costly reliance on first responders and hospital systems. In other words, when someone goes into the emergency room, 9 times out of 10, if they are homeless, they are using it as a means to get off the street, and that is extremely expensive. So we partner with hospitals to break that cycle of high utilization, and they segue from the emergency room to our emergency shelter. We have more expansion projects on the horizon coming in 2023, 3 housing projects in West Hollywood, and Essentia will provide opportunity to house an additional 146 individuals and family households. Our mission to lift people out of homelessness, one person, one family at a time, we envision a community where people in need can access services and find safe, affordable housing. And our values, our agency values, include inclusion, respect, tenacity, and harmony. Our work begins with respect for the dignity of the people we serve, driven by the persistent and unfailing belief that no one should be without a home. Who do we help? We help U.S. military veterans, victims of intimate partner violence, emancipating foster care youth, families with minors, persons with disability, our BIPOC community members, the LGBTQIA persons, people who suffered losses, working people, college students, elderly, and those that are caught up in the cycle of poverty. I'm happy to share that 95% of the people we placed in permanent housing remained housed for over a year. And I'm proud to share over the past 15 years, Ascensia has assisted over 12,000 people and have housed over 1,700. I want to thank Katie Golding for inviting me here today to share about Ascensia, and thank you for opening your hearts to helping more people be housed and get off the streets. Thank you.
Everybody was sent to this world. You were sent to this world. People, you were sent to this world. You were sent to this world. There's a reason you were born. There's a purpose for everyone. You were not born by accident. There's a reason you were sent. You were sent to this world. You were sent to this world. There's no difference who you are. You were sent to this world. You may be rich, you may be poor, you may be high, you may be low. You were not born by accident. There's a reason you were sent. You were sent to this world. Everybody was sent to this world. It makes no difference who you are. You were sent to this world. Sent here to live in this old world. Sent here to live in this old world. Make the best you can of your efforts. Make the best you can of your efforts. I'll be careful how you treat others. 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 Sent here to live in this old world. Sent here to live in this old world.
Oh, wow, that was amazing. Thank you so much. Wow, Angelina and I asked them to put that song together. If you haven't heard Johnny Frierson, he wrote an amazing record. And you can find it on YouTube or you find it on iTunes, but they just did an amazing job of that, so that was really cool for me. This is a reading from Invisible Cities by Italo Calvino, and this is a short introduction to what the book is. In a garden sit the aged Kublai Khan and the young Marco Polo, Tartar emperor, and Venetian traveler. Kublai Khan has sensed the end of his empire coming soon. Marco Polo diverts the emperor with tales of the cities he has seen in his travels around the empire. Cities and memory, cities and desire, cities and designs, cities and the dead, cities in the sky, trading cities, hidden cities. Soon it becomes clear that each of these fantastic places is really the same place. The Great Khan's atlas contains also the maps of the promised lands, visited in thought, but not yet discovered or founded. New Atlantis, Utopia, the City of the Sun, Oceania, Tamaway, New Harmony, New Lanark, Icaria. Kublai asked Marco, "You, who go about exploring and who see signs, can tell me toward which of these futures the favoring winds are driving us?" For these ports, I could not draw a route on the map or set a date for the landing. At times, all I need is a brief glimpse, an opening in the midst of an incongruous landscape, glint of lights in the fog, the dialogue of two passers-by meeting in the crowd, and I think that setting out from there, I will put together, piece by piece, the perfect city, made of fragments mixed with the rest, of instants separated by intervals, of signals one sends out not knowing who receives them. If I tell you that the city toward which my journey tends is discontinuous in space and time, now scattered, now more condensed, you must not believe the search for it can stop. Perhaps while we speak, it is rising, scattered, within the confines of your empire. You can hunt for it, but only in the way that I have said. Already the great Khan was leafing through his atlas over the maps of the cities that menace in nightmares and maledictions. Enoch, Babylon, Yahuland, Butua, brave new world. He said, "It is all useless. If the last landing place can only be the infernal city, and it is there that in ever-narrowing circles the current is drawing us." And Polo said, "The inferno of the living is not something that will be. If there is one, it is what is already here. The inferno where we live every day, that we form by being together. There are two ways to escape suffering it. The first is easy for many. Accept the inferno and become such a part of it that you can no longer see it. The second is risky and demands constant vigilance and apprehension. Seek and learn to recognize who and what in the midst of the inferno are not inferno. Then make them endure. Give them space.
Before I begin the reading, friends, please take a moment with me to hold in your thoughts and your silent prayers those who are struggling, those who have experienced loss, those experiencing war, and those for whom reasons for hope might feel a little distanced. I invite you now to turn your thoughts and prayers to those who are celebrating, whether it's the big stuff shouted from the rooftops or the quiet stuff that are held in the secrets and the corners of our hearts. These are the prayers for our community and our world. Amen. This reading is a selection of passages from chapter 3 of the book, Another Way, Living and Leading Change on Purpose. One's call and one's purpose grow out of one's imagination, passions, interests, experiences, and contexts. All of these are clues that help us discover how our unique gifts are pulled forth from the world over the course of our lifetimes in ways that began long before us and continue long after us. Call can arise from deep pain in one's life or from approaching the world with curiosity, which author Elizabeth Gilbert describes as an impulse that just taps you on the shoulder ever lightly and invites you to turn your head a quarter of an inch and look a little closer at something that has intrigued you. While pursuing a call can sometimes be costly, it does not necessarily require one to suffer. Passion for a cause can cost too much, and it's important to steward one's own health and well-being. Passion elicits questions like, about what do I care deeply? What am I willing to sacrifice? What are the limits of my sacrifice? Sometimes passion unveils a call. Other times a call illuminates or clarifies an already existing passion we have. Purpose focuses the energy of our passion and the trajectory of our call. Oftentimes, our passions can expand our imagination of a call. Our call can redefine our sense of purpose in life. People discover their purpose as a result of listening and responding to the needs, cries, passions, and longings in their lives.
You may remain seated for our meditative hymn. It is number 20 in our gray hymnal, Be Thou My Vision. Be thou my vision, O God of my heart, not be all else to me, save that thou art. Thou
Hello again. This opening quote is from Howard Thurman, who was a great educator, human rights advocate, and mentor to Martin Luther King Jr. Don't ask yourself what the world needs. Ask yourself what makes you come alive. And go do that. Because what the world needs is people who have come alive. Angeline found that quote, and Angeline asked me to join her in this service today. So I want to thank her first before we start our conversation together. She's a little ahead of me in the seminary program, so she's bringing on a youngster. And so I wanted to say, we're asking ourselves today about why ministry makes Angeline and I come alive. So Angeline, how you doing?
I'm good. I'm happy to be live. How are you?
I'm good. It's so good to be here with you. So the first question is, what is one of the most important memories or experiences in your life that have led you to considering ministry?
Okay. So I was raised Brethren. I grew up in the Brethren church. My parents are Brethren. My dad is an elder in the church. My mom, a Sunday school superintendent, and now a deaconess, which was unheard of when I was growing up. My life was, church, school, and home. That was it. Now, I think that because I grew up in the church, I'd always just had this passion for Christ. I'm using my Brethren language. I'd always had this passion for Christ, wanting to live for God and to save souls, really. I mean, that was part of the deal, right? And there was a church crusade I went to when I was still a small child, and I remember the altar call. So back up, church crusade, there was a tent in the middle of an open field, and it was preaching and songs and church, evangelical church. And at the end of the sermon, the choir started to sing, "All to Jesus I surrender." I will tell you that despite the meandering journey I have had to Unitarian Universalism that we'll talk about in a minute, that song still can move me even now. And so that song, I heard that song and I was like, I don't know, 5 or 6. And I just moved to the front with the rest of everybody else to this altar call. And that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to respond to that space. And I wanted to live for Jesus in a more concrete way. Because as I said, I grew up in a church. And it was at that point that I knew for sure that I wanted to help to lead others to Christ. And so I got enthusiastic about tract distribution. I would go on tract distribution to the communities near to the church, down the road from the church in the fishing community. And before the teenage years started kicking in, even wanted to talk about Jesus at school and that kind of stuff. But the thing is that, and I'll just say this, it was jumping a lot forward, I started to realize that ministry itself was not an option for me. I was a woman in the Brethren church, and women could not be ministers, you could not be elders, you could not preach. You could lead a song, but you couldn't lead prayer, and then I started to realize too that I'm a lesbian. So I'm a lesbian and I'm a woman. No way was this gonna happen for me in this church. And it wasn't until many years later that I really had that one defining moment. I was sitting on the patio at Jamaica Aid Support for Life, and a young man came up to me and he said, "What are you doing here?" He said, "You look like a Christian." And I said, "Yeah, I am." And he said, "Well, what are you doing here?" I said, "Why? Why would you ask me this question?" He said, "Don't you know the type of people who come here?" I could hear Bible passages of Jesus and whichever person's talking about, why are you talking to these people? And I said, why, what people are here? And he said, well, you know, homosexuals and people with HIV. And he and I got into a conversation, and you know, his space of thinking that he was sinful, he was a sinner. And it was a moment of me being able to say to him, I'm not ordained. I've done a lot of readings because I love to drop down rabbit holes of research. But what I have understood and what I come to believe is that you are not sinful. LGBTQ people are not sinful. You are still loved. You are loved by God, regardless of what the church that you hear saying, because there are a lot of noisy churches. And it was a moment of, you know, when we finished that conversation, he said, you know, thank you. I'd never thought about this way. I've never seen him since. I don't remember what he looks like. I was 19. And I just remember that being a moment of realizing, this is it. I want to be able to have this type of impact on other folks, other queer folks who believe that they're not loved by the divine, and wanting to be able to share that message with them and affirm them in their fullness of self. So Nick, what experience led you to ministry? I mean,
well, that was really
what
lovely.
experience led you to ministry?
Yeah, that was really lovely, Angeline. And you know, Angeline and I have talked a few times, and we can talk forever, but I will try to be more succinct. So than I usually am in my daily life. The memory that I'll share is been an important one for me my entire life. And I've used it in many different ways. So I went to Catholic school my entire life. I went to kindergarten through 8th grade. It was uniform Catholic school. I'm from Omaha, Nebraska. I'm from a western suburbs, so very, very white, upper middle class, predominantly conservative Catholic beginning. And I, in 1st grade, was asked to bring a plain white t-shirt and watercolors to school, and we're supposed to paint what we want to be when we grew up, and I painted a priest. So I have been a professional actor for the last 25 years, and that's why I'm here in Los Angeles. And so I used to always just joke that I just really wanted to be on stage with all the most attention on me. It wasn't really like a spiritual underpinning at all. I just wanted all the attention. And but fast forward to in college, I went to an all-male Jesuit high school. I went to a Jesuit college, and I took a liberation theology semester abroad in the Dominican Republic, and we would live in the campos, and we were working on race. You know, we were trying to learn race relations between Dominicans and Haitians, and it was very, very deeply eye-opening for me, obviously, as you can imagine, from the beginnings I told you about. And at the time, I'd already worked in a professional capacity and as an actor, and I was really trying to decide, should I go some sort of social justice-oriented route in my life, or should I go follow my acting? And my teachers and my fellow students told me, you know, pursue my career. And so those are really formative, those are like anchor points that I go back to. And over the last 5 years, you know, pandemic and unemployment, for a number of factors, not least of which is I'm in my 40s now, and you know that I got more jobs when I was young, and you know there are all kinds of reasons for this stuff. But I found I don't want to jump ahead, Angeline, too far, but what I will say is I have come back to melding these parts of myself together, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. So, Angeline, how did you find Unitarian Universalism?
How did I find UU? I talk about UU like a person. Like I found UU. I came to know UU in 2012. I was involved in LGBTQ activism, and our group was. I did a conference in D.C., Washington, D.C., and we, as part of the conference structure, it was 2 weeks, As part of that, we were housed, individuals of the participants in the program were housed with various people within the DMV, the DC, Maryland, Virginia area. And I got placed with a sweet lesbian couple in Arlington, Virginia. And they were Unitarian Universalists, and they took me to church, which happens to be the church that Reverend Teresa last served before she came to Neighborhood. But when I went to UU Church in Arlington, Virginia, Reverend Carlton Elliott Smith was there. And I won't lie, I mean, I stepped into that church and I had some doubts. There were not a lot of people of color, but Reverend Carlton was there. And he was there, and what I heard was exactly what I wanted to hear. Now, this is after meandering, as I said, I've meandered through agnostic atheism, science of mind, and broader metaphysical concepts, and even engaging myself with metropolitan community churches and their church in Los Angeles. But UU came in 2012, and then it just kind of paused because there are no UU congregations in Jamaica. This is 2012. Nobody wanted to do church. I, at 22, did not want to do church online. And so even though Church of the Larger Fellowship was there, it was not something that I engaged in. And then it was in 2014 that I met Reverend Adam Dyer in San Diego. And Reverend Adam and I got on like a house on fire. And from 2014, we'd talk probably once a month. And Reverend Adam, was the senior minister at First Parish Church in Cambridge. And Reverend Adam and I would just have these conversations. And I remember one day in 2019, Adam sends me a message and says, "Are you still interested in ministry?" I said, "Yeah, I am. I just can't afford to go to seminary. So what do you have for me?" And he said, "Go check out this website." And it was a website for Meadville Lombard. And I read the website. I liked how they spoke about how school was done. And I said, "This makes sense. I can figure out how to afford this." Great. So I submitted the application. And it was when I submitted the application, I said, okay, so this is a UU seminary. So am I stepping into Meadville as a person who wants to go into UU ministry, or as somebody interested in ministry, broadly speaking, and still finding that, denominational affiliation? And I started reading more about Unitarian Universalism, reading through the UUA website, a number of books. And then I finally got to that place where I said, I still like what the UUs are saying from the first time I heard it in 2012. And I'm here in seminary, and I know I'm going to get an opportunity to have a deeper dive into what Unitarian Universalism is. But yeah, that was kind of the trajectory of how I found UU, but also how I got myself into seminary. What about you?
So I went through a period in my 20s where, I tried to kind of stay with Catholicism in new and progressive circles, and I just couldn't feel at home there anymore. And that was always a struggle with my personal family. It was my nuclear family. That was not an easy conversation in my life. So I started to just kind of do the things that, 20-year-olds do. I hung out a lot, I read. I was focused on having these conversations, philosophical conversations. When I met my wife, the woman who would become my wife in 10 years ago, 2012, I started for the first time, instead of just reading, I'd been into atheism, which when I was young, that was like Satan literature, which is really funny because atheism doesn't believe in that. But I realized how freeing the thought process of atheism felt to me. And yet it was as many people, I think, understand atheism to be, it can be very about what you're not and not so much about what you're for. And then I stumbled into humanism. And that's then I found my way into the UU world. And then I found my way to Neighborhood. And I live in North Hollywood. And so the year before the pandemic hit, I was dipping my toe in here. I don't know, maybe some of you have seen my face around, like hovering around the edges for a while, but, and I'll tell you, I think the first 2 or 3 times I was here, I wept in church. I did not think that I still believed that religion had a place. I had lost track of what religion could be for me. And I think it's a story I hear a lot now that I'm in the UU circles more, for a lot of people that were not cradle UUs. And so that's how I found it. So we'll talk, I'll save the next section where my brain wants to go for the next section. So Angeline, what about coming to ministry? Oh, let me say one last thing, which is that I had my son. That was a really big deal. And when I had my son, I really wanted a community where it wasn't just me talking about these things, but he was in a structure of other people who were talking about these things. That was a big part of finding neighborhood. So what about coming to ministry feels like you're coming alive? Why is ministry, what does it mean to come alive, and why ministry?
What does it mean to come alive? That's a big question. But I can start with saying, just recently, my baby sister called me and said, you know what, you've made a decision about what to do in life, and I think that you could help somebody else. And I said, I don't know where you've gotten that fallacy. It took me a very long time. It took me a very long time to figure out that seminary was where I wanted to be, but sure, I can help. And so with that, I moved from information technology to law to business to IT to an MBA to seminary. That's how I've gotten here. And as I said earlier, I came to ministry from activism. Now, this is what was interesting. I knew why I came to seminary. I knew I came to seminary because I want to be in Jamaica. I want to wear a clerical collar as a lesbian and stand up on the roadside holding signs protesting for LGBTQ rights. That was the goal. And somewhere in between that being the goal and the end of year 1, I forgot why I came to seminary. I got really caught up in, oh, it's ministry, and I'm being a minister, and this is what minister is supposed to look like. And I've seen Unitarian Universalism. I know that ministry is not just in the pulpit. But somehow, in year 1, I got lost in that space. And, but towards the end of, so the first semester, it's not all of year 1, to be fair. But after the first semester, I got back into the space of starting to peel back the layers because, oh my goodness. I mean, I think all grad school is about, breaking you up piece by piece and then putting you back together. But I think there's something special about ministry that's just like, let me peel all these onion layers off and chop you up and find some way to pull you all back together. And so I had that, I've been having that experience of seminary and pulling it all apart. And by doing that, I also started to remember why I wanted to come to seminary in the first place, why I wanted to be a minister. It wasn't just to stand on the roadside in a clerical collar holding a sign, but it was also because of the conversation I had with that young man at Jazz on the veranda. It was the conversations that I've had with other people that weren't as formative as that, but the other small conversations that I've had with folks over the years. And it was just that space of remembering gospel message that I wanted to bring that good news to LGBTQ folks, that they are loved by the divine and they are loved as they are. And so one of the wonderful things that has happened in the second year of seminary is that starting this internship and being with your neighborhood has been a space of being in congregational life as much as I'm not with you, but being able to still have the space of congregational life and seeing that and engaging with folks in this capacity. Another thing that has happened was that my internship chair, Bill, has been able to help me get conversations with chaplains. And I've been having some very interesting conversations with chaplains. And one of the conversations I had earlier this year, the chaplain said to me, well, it's not ministry on one hand and activism on the other hand. They're the same thing. This is not new. I heard this in first semester, but it just didn't click. But I heard it again when I needed to hear it and when I was ready to hear it. And so that space of that finally clicking and realizing, oh, my ministry is my activism is my ministry. And my activism is a space that makes me feel alive because I am making change, not just for me, but for every LGBTQ person in Jamaica, LGBTQ people across the world right now and generations to come. What about you, Nick?
Oh, that's beautiful, Angeline. Man, this is one where I just want to talk for hours. I've been a professional actor for 25 years, like I said, and I really was able to do it for a long time. I never had to have another career. I've watched a lot of friends come and go. And despite how hard I feel like I was doing a good job because I've kept good friends in my life, but it is hard when I was experiencing success in my business. I'm sure other people can relate to their success in their own businesses or their lives, but it was hard to keep my ego truly grounded. It's a tough business, you get a lot of things. And when the bottom fell out of my career, which is to say that I thought I was on a trajectory, one direction, and I didn't work for a number of years, and I was very confused by it, and a number of other things in my life happened that were very, very significant. And then the pandemic happened. I was left totally untethered from any of the things that I had felt were the structure of my life for the last 20 years. And during that time, I started a podcast where it's called God and Other Delicacies, and I ask everybody the same opening question, which is how and when were you introduced to the idea of God in your life? And it's not dogmatic. I'm just trying to get people from a lot of different perspectives to talk. So clearly, I'm just really fascinated by figuring out how other people are doing this, because I'm trying to figure out how to do it. And that, during that time, George Floyd was murdered, and I was one of the many white folks who really sat and reflected on how I did not feel like I had open and deep conversations and relationships with enough African American friends, or even my black friends that I've had my entire life. I never really even asked them a lot of times about what it was like to be, where has racism played out in your life? Some of my best friends, never really talked to them about this. It was a real shocking moment of self-discovery. And I had another kind of revelation that sort of made me realize, it's time for me to get back in touch with that kid who went to the Dominican Republic all those years ago. And I have all these skills that I've developed over the years on how to communicate, which is what acting training is about. And I found myself just going full throttle into UUism. I felt like this was a place where I could have this conversation and I could really learn a lot. And I found myself to Meadville Lombard, and I jumped in. And so now I'm still finishing my first year, and I'm still keeping my entertainment profession in the new phase that it's in. And I have an amazing wife who's supporting me throughout all of this. And I think that, ultimately coming alive for me, when I think about what coming alive means, there's something about joy, there's something about being present, and it can be anything that you're doing, or it could be doing something you don't even like, but for a reason that brings you these other things. And I sort of met my mortality at the age of 40 for a lot of different reasons, and which was 2020. And I came out of it going, I want to be more living with I want to be living with people that are all experiencing that in the day-to-day. I want to be around people who are dying, and I want to be around people who have lost people. And it makes me feel alive to be near the margins of life, the dangers of life, because it's just everywhere anyway. So I could go off and on and on and on about that. Angeline, how much time do we have in our...
We are out of time.
We're out of time. That feels right, right? That feels right.
So, Nick and I could talk for hours about this, and we really have. And as much as this was us talking about what makes us come alive and feel alive, we really hope that we have begun to just to begin to stir the same question in you. What makes you, friends, come alive? Nick, thank you for this conversation.
Thank you, Angeline.
Tao is a whirling emptiness, yet when used, it cannot be explained, cannot be exhausted. Out of this mysterious well flows everything in existence, blunting sharp edges, untangling knots, softening the glare, settling the dust. It evolves us all and makes the whole world one. Something is there, hidden in the deep, but I do not know whose child it is. It came even before God.
Our closing hymn is number 1028 in our teal hymnal, The Fire of Commitment. Please stand in body or in spirit.
Nicholas, could you please unmute the church laptop microphone?
What'd you say? Mute the church what?
I'm here. On the laptop. On the laptop, folks. Here we go. Connect. We keep doing this connection over perfection. I love it. I also love when technology decides that it will wait right until we finish the big pieces to stop working. I appreciate that. When the fire of commitment sets our mind and soul ablaze, when our hunger and our passion meet to call us on our way, when we live with deep, deep assurance of the flame that burns within, then our promise finds fulfillment and our future can begin. Johnny Fearson's song reminds us too that we were sent to this world. If each of us were to come alive to that which moves, drives, and pulls us, then maybe, just maybe, our world can become a better place for all. Today, as you leave, friends, I invite you to consider over the course of this week whether or not you find that the things you do for employment as a volunteer or in any other capacity, whether the things that you do, that this action can, in the broader picture, be part of what makes the world a better place for all, and what makes you come alive.